Welcome everybody, this is the Microsoft 365 Platform Community Call. It is February 15th, so we're already halfway through February, actually a bit more than halfway through February because we have only 28 days this month. So my name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm a program manager in the Microsoft 365 Platform side of the house, and I will work as your host today. Now, today's agenda, we actually have quite a few slides to run through in the first 15 minutes as we go through the latest updates and news on the Microsoft 365 platform. We also cover the monthly contributors in the Microsoft 365 open source and community efforts, as that monthly summary went live as a blog post last week. We'll have a quick crew photo in the together mode, of course, and then we have 3 demos queued up today. So we'll start with Tom moving the Harshift, and then Seb is the last one on the call on today. A quick recap on the assets and resources which we have available for you. So we do have 2 different YouTube channels, which is a bit of a confusing. That's historical reasons how we ended up being on this situation, and combining YouTube channels is a bit complicated task. So for now, we have the official 365 developer videos channel, which is mainly for official videos and guidance from our cloud advocates. And then we have our community YouTube channel, where we have mainly then community provided videos, community call recordings, and all of the individual demos from these sessions as well. We do have a lot of open source and assets available, but accessing the samples directly from GitHub might be a bit complicated and it's hard to find. So therefore, we have individual sample galleries as well, which will make it easier for you to find what's relevant for you. So if you're, for example, looking into getting started on building something for Microsoft Teams as a starting point, or maybe for Microsoft List as a list definition, or SPFX for Viva Connections, have a look on our sample galleries. There's something to start with, so don't start from scratch and then adjust whatever you have or find based on your requirements, or at least there's an example to get started on achieving what are your objectives. And if you're wondering that there's too many URLs to remember, luckily there's only one URL which rules them all, which is AKMS M365 PMP, and from there you can find all of the links to our community call, YouTube channels, samples, tooling, SDKs, documentation, and all of that stuff. So everything related on our community is found from that one single location. Now, something what we always remind on these calls is that we would love you to join on our Microsoft 365 developer program. This is a great program, which will give you a free E5 developer tenant as a sign in. And as long as you keep on using that tenant for developer usage, then it will renew every single 90 days automatically. You can sign in to this program using AKMS/M365/dev program, and it's really cool. Within a matter of minutes, you will get a demo tenant for your consumption with example content and all of that. We also have a lot of free training material available for you in the Microsoft Learn site. So basically, there's 12 or 11, I guess, learning paths, and inside of these learning paths we have individual modules. So right this week or last week we released the latest module around building Microsoft Teams and meeting apps, which is a great 1-hour learning exercise or a learning module to learn on how to do that. So there's a lot of material, 74 training modules available in this location. So please take advantage of that. Now, we also have our Microsoft 365 Unified Sample Gallery, our official Let's Go. Now it's available, GA, whatever, on the sample gallery. Goes live tomorrow, actually, as a blog post. We've been kind of teasing this around and having it in a soft release status for a long time. There's more than 890 samples already available from Microsoft and community, and we're looking into getting more and more samples available from here. The main objectives here is that you can just simply use the search to find the sample what you're looking for, rather than trying to find it from the multiple different GitHub repos and locations. So go to one location and just use the search to find the sample what you're looking for, and then get access on the source code. Now, as you're wondering on how would I then start using those samples, or how would I get started on a community, we can help you with this. And David, up to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vesa. Yeah, as he has mentioned, we want you to take advantage of all these resources, whether you're using or you using and then you improve it and you want to contribute back. We love that. But we understand that there may be some hurdles that get in the way of doing that. Things like, what's a GitHub pull request, or how do I fork something? Lots of weird questions around doing those kind of contributions, or even sometimes using some of the resources, multiple versions of Node, SPFX. Perhaps you want to present on one of our community calls, we want to help you. Now, these Sharing is Caring sessions are from a program that provides hands-on guidance, and these are safe space, not recorded sessions where you work along with members of the P&P team and other MVPs and Microsoft employees and others in the community. So it's a great collaborative opportunity to learn together. Safe space, as I mentioned, not recorded, so you can ask questions, and we will do it all together. It's something that we can do live in a session together. So don't hesitate. We've got a number of session topics available to you coming up for registration. We've got some new features that we're using for webinars to register everybody. And of course, we've also got the ever popular AMAs next week, 1 week from today. Right after this will be the P&P React controls. 1 week after that will be Graph and MGT with Seb. That's always a lot of fun. And then we just scheduled, congratulations to P&P JS 3.0 that went live yesterday. We're going to have an AMA coming up with Patrick and Julie. So get involved. We'd love to collaborate with everyone in the community and support you. Vesa, back to you.
Thank you, David, on that one. So awesome job. And just as recently as yesterday, there was the last session related on Power Platform sample first-time contributor. So really, really cool stuff and a lot of great feedback on the social media on that. So thank you, David, for running this show together with the other ones who are running the Sharing is Caring program. Now, we also do have two different podcasts and video blogs, which we release frequently. So first of them is the Microsoft 365 Developer Podcast, which is a show hosted by Jeremy Fake and Paul Schaffelin. And Jeremy is a program manager lead in Microsoft, and Paul Schaffelin works in the Adding 365. And they typically have visitors from the Microsoft side or from the MVP side to talk about certain specific technical details. The other show which we are releasing on a weekly basis is our Microsoft 365 PMP Weekly, which is hosted by me and together with Waldek Mastercards, who is a cloud advocate. And then in this show, we typically have an MVP or a Microsoft PM to talk about their career development or other relevant topics as well. So the latest show on this one was released today with the visitor Sudha Narayan, and Sudha is a PM in my team related on how to integrate Power Platform on SharePoint, which has a lot of usage, and she's doing a great job on that. So really interesting discussion on moving from India to US, back to India to US, and so on. So there was a lot of interesting discussions on that one. Now, last week, there was actually quite a lot of news within the developer side of the house or in general in our platform. So first of all, the latest news which went live today was around updated design guidance for Viva Connection custom cards and quick views. So we do have a open source GitHub location for a new adapted card designs, which are there to inspire people on showing what you can actually do within the Viva connection. Also, Brian D. Jacket had a blog post related on Microsoft Graph Mailback, search-driven items for only files. And this is a really cool summary blog post or kind of a reminder blog post. How can you target your search queries in Microsoft's Graph to a individual files rather than files and folders. So there's a specific filters on doing that. We also released the SharePoint Framework 1.14 release candidate last week. The GA is intended to happen actually tomorrow. Let's see if that will happen. So the 16th of February, but release candidate went live last week. And that's already intended to be pretty much what we will release this week. Also, last week we talked about the fact that client secret expiration is now limited for maximum of 2 years. So there's no unlimited time frame on that one on the identity side of the house. And then ICABUS had a great blog post on the community series, which was around React web app and Azure Q&A bot to centralized learning resources. There was also some news in the Microsoft Teams blog side, on the Viva side, and also on the SharePoint blog side of the house, which you might want to check out related on the platform work. Now, mentioning ICABUS, ICA is running this weekly show, Learn from the Community, and this week, this just went live on this, pretty much on this minute. Central Beath and Malte Rainman talk about a React app to centralize the shopping list chatbot for Microsoft Teams personal and group chat. So really kind of a cool setup on taking advantage of the Microsoft Teams extensibility and how it has been built together. Now, ICA is also recruiting community members on this one. So if you want to share your stories on what you've been building in Microsoft 365 platform, please sign up by going to the address akms/share-your-story, where you can sign up for those stories. Now, as mentioned, we also wanted to cover quickly the monthly summaries and monthly contributors this week. So as we publish the monthly community summary once a month, and then there's one of these weekly calls are covering always this, what is the changes. So this is a summary which went live last week in our community blog at AKMS m365bnb/community/blog. And there was a lot of contributors again on last month within our community channel. So we're back again on a listing which is in 3 slides, so that the number or the size of the font isn't too small. I'm not going to run through all of the people who've been actively involved, but a lot of people are contributing to our open source channels. That's from A to G, and then that's from H to M, and then a lot of new people here as well. It's great to see old names, but also new people every single month being actively involved in our open source and community channels, and that's from N to Y. And so thank you for everybody being involved in this. You are truly making a big difference and helping other people in the community, and also the input what you're giving us in the product group and engineering is invaluable. So as part of this open source community work, you're contributing and telling us what's needed, and therefore we know what is the required next steps for certain different areas within our platform. So thank you for that. We also had quite a few companies which we are allowed to show, from which employees were part of the previous lists. So we can show the logos. So these are the companies who are allowing their employees being actively involved in the open source and community channels. So thank you for that one as well. And then we had a lot of Microsoft employees as well. So growing number of Microsoft employees being more actively involved in the open source and community channels around the Microsoft 365 platform. So thank you for that. Now, the next phase, we will go to the group photo, and I guess Seb is already in the call as well. So let's follow the example of Seb. Let's see where we will actually land with him. I will just landed Seb on the back row. So you're not in the front row like last Thursday. So we're already recording, and wait a second, we can fill in the 50 seats. I will still put my camera on. Let's see if I can actually make it. Oh, I got it, I got in. So I guess we're fully booked. So let's do some hand waving for everybody else in the community. Thank you for being here. Awesome to have you as part of this community. Thank you. Awesome to see so many familiar faces and really big eyes on the front row as well. So thank you for that. And every single week there's something funny happening in the screens. Thank you. And let's actually grab a GIF animation out of that. So that's going to be shared as part of the blog post, which goes live as part of the recording then tomorrow. And I will put that one in the chat tomorrow when the recording has been published. Now, right on time to go to the demo. So we'll start with Tom, then moving to Hit after that, and then Seb is the last presenter of the day. But Tom, we saw you on the call already. So let's actually jump on your screen.
All right, I will share my screen here.
There we go. We can see the screen. Take it away.
Cool. So my name is Tom Moser. I'm a senior program manager on the Cloud Data Security team, formerly the Azure Information and Protection team. And I'm going to talk to you all today about some APIs that we shipped in Graph quite a while ago. They're still in beta. Everything I'll talk about today is changing like this week, but functionally everything remains about the same. We just moved to a different endpoint and changed some of the classes a little bit. So I'll walk you through what exactly Microsoft Information Protection is and does today, and then we'll get into some quick demos on the Graph APIs. So you may have heard of Microsoft Information Protection. It's not a product, it's not something we sell, it's a set of capabilities that centers really around our ability to classify and protect data, whether that data is an Office document, whether it's a team, a SharePoint site. We can apply sensitivity labels to that information, and the sensitivity labels drive the protection story downstream. So I can prevent guests from accessing the site. I can encrypt the content so it's only consumable by users in my organization, and various other protections that we can apply based on the sensitivity label. And the idea is that users can apply that label based on their knowledge of the information, which will then hopefully secure it. So the sensitivity labels themselves are configured as part of Compliance Center. You may have seen this taxonomy where we start at public and things go all the way to highly confidential, completely customizable based on your organizational needs. So I'll show you an example of what the Microsoft taxonomy looks like here in a minute. You can have top secrets, whatever you want to call them. And the idea is that by users or automations applying what they know about the content to some piece of information, we can help to better restrict access to that information and protect our organizations from data leakage. So a few examples of integrations that we have today in just Microsoft products. With the sensitivity labeling, you may have seen this in Teams where I can create a team and I can set the sensitivity, and setting that sensitivity, like in the slide here, we've set it to confidential, restricts the audience for that. So by setting that to confidential, I can make this team so it's only available for my organization. It can't have guests or be public. Power BI has also shipped support for labeling, wherein that I can apply labels to Power BI artifacts, to Power BI desktop reports and things, and that again drives the protection story. So it'll encrypt that PBIX file, preventing me from sharing it outside of my organization. And then finally, on the right side, you can see the Office example. So this is the sensitivity label interface inside of Office. This is, I think, actually the Azure Information Protection one, where we've defined our classification taxonomy all the way from non-business to highly confidential. And then under confidential and highly confidential, we have a set of sublabels that all apply a different behavior. And those behaviors can be things like applying metadata to the content so that we know the label exists, applying protection settings to the content. So in the case of confidential Microsoft FTE, we would restrict that for only Microsoft full-time employees. Extended would expand to our vendors and other partners. And you can use that to scope down the audience on documents or emails as far as who can access that information. Additionally, we can apply things like content marking, so header, footer, and watermark, so that we can visually see that this information is protected. And then we support a bunch of other non-Office related things that are more for Power BI teams and other workloads. Question about licensing. This is available in E3. So as long as you have M365 E3, you can access all of this. Now, the features may vary. You don't get some of the auto classification capabilities, but the labeling itself is available for E3. So today, to enable this is my responsibility. What I work on today is the Microsoft Information Protection Developer Platform, which includes really two main parts today. One is the MIP SDK, which has been available for about 4 years, and then the others are Graph Interface. So I'll cover the SDK only because it really sets us up for talking about the Graph API, and then we'll talk about exactly what the Graph API offers. So MIP SDK enables my apps and services to take all the labeling stuff that I just showed you and build it into my line of business apps, into third-party apps. Show you some partners in the next slide. It's written in C++, cross-platform, so it works across Mac, Windows, Linux, iOS, and Android. And we have .NET flavors available for Ubuntu and Windows, and we're working on a Java wrapper that's in preview now. Eventually, the Java wrapper will work across all of our supported platforms. We don't expect that to be generally available till later this year. And again, this allows you to extend the classification, labeling, and protection capabilities into your own apps and services and line of business apps. This is used across a whole bunch of our partners and vendors. Internal workloads include Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, Office apps. We have some internal workloads that are just first party only that are starting to take this up. And then we've got a whole bunch of third-party partners that are integrating this as well. And then finally, talk about this more in a minute, we have the graph interfaces that expose some of our policy interface. So the MIP SDK itself is really 3 different SDKs. We have our, starting at the bottom right, the protection SDK, which is purely about encryption. It allows me to encrypt and decrypt buffers or streams of bytes and to expose some information about the rights management. So inside of Office, we can restrict things like copy and print or across any app that consumes the SDK. And the protection SDK is responsible for surfacing the crypto operations and the rights management component. And then it's up to my app to enforce that. To the left of that, we have the policy SDK, which is useful for client applications. So a couple of slides ago where I showed you those admin interfaces or user interfaces where I can configure the label, that's driven by our policy SDK, which is what we'll talk about in Graph today. And then finally is our file SDK. So this is used by partners like Veritas, Digital Guardian, ForcePoint, Varonis to reason over files directly. I don't have to know anything about how to encrypt a file. I don't have to parse out streams from a Word doc or anything. I point the API to a file. I point the API to a label ID, and it takes care of the rest for me. Also used inside of line of business applications and customer environments to encrypt things like PDF files or Office docs at creation instead of relying on the user to do something. So we'll get to the policy SDK because that's what the graph interface is covering today. The policy SDK and our graph APIs, I like to say, don't actually do anything. They're not going to label any content for you. They're not going to take any actions on something that you own. It's more of a state machine that returns some information about policy that your application then has to apply. So what we'll do is allow you to pass in a state. You can say the document has this label on it or has no label on it, and I want to apply this label to the content. And what our API will return is a set of actions, and those actions need to be taken by your application in order to appropriately label the content based on the MIP-defined labeling patterns. So the input's always going to be this, what we call an execution state or a content state, and the output will always be a list of actions for our evaluate APIs, and I'll show you some examples here momentarily. This also covers our auditing. So if you've seen the auditing story inside of the compliance portal in M365, the policy SDK is responsible for those events landing inside of the audit experience. This API is exposed via both Graph and MIP SDK, so you could go to NuGet, download our .NET package, and run this in like a local app or an app hosted in Azure, or you can just hit a Graph endpoint directly. So I'll switch over to demos. Now my demos are all in Postman today. We're in the middle of changing these APIs based on feedback from customers and trying to consolidate. And so today what you'll see is I've got a bunch of different APIs over here and calls that I can make. Get labels, these evaluate calls, and then extract label are the ones that we'll look at today because those are the primary ones. The rest of these are mostly for testing. So today this is hitting the Graph beta endpoint. We're not available at the V1 endpoint yet. We're shipping some updates again to Graph where we're going to migrate this. So rather than this endpoint being under information protection policy, you'll see this hopefully by the end of the week under security/information protection/sensitivity labels. And we're doing some work internally to consolidate across security and compliance and get all of our APIs in one place. So this is our Get Labels API. A user could call this or an application could call this. If I'm a user and I call this API, I will get back the labels that are specific to me. If I'm a service and I call this, I can either make a delegated call where I say, give me the labels for a user, or I can call and get all the labels for the tenant. So that might be used by, for example, networks shipped an integration with their next generation firewall. They would want to do that as an admin so they have a full purview into all the labels that are in the tenant so they can block things leaving the network. And if I run this, and if everything goes well, I'll get a reply back and you'll see a whole bunch of labels in here. So these label names aren't great, they're for testing, but what I get back is a collection of these information protection policy labels that contains really the assets that I need to render this inside of an application. So I'm not going to get any details on policy. This doesn't tell me what to do when I apply that label. It just says, here's the label name, here's the color if it's set, here's the sensitivity value, so I know how to order this in my list. Here's whether it's active or not. And then I could use that to render the experience inside my application. So whether that's a web app, whether it's a mobile client, this is how I can fetch the labels. So then the next call a user might make is my application has rendered these labels and now I want to call the API and say, hey, tell me what to do. I've got this content state and now I want to apply a label. So in this case, what we've got is this content info object that we pass in. We're going to set some information about the current state. So we pass in some key value pairs that say, this is the label that exists on the document today. And if we scroll down, and then we'll say, and this is the label ID that I want to apply now. So tell me what to do. And when I run this, I'll get a response that tells me exactly what I have to do. So this contains a bunch of what we call information protection actions. And in this case, add content footer actions. So specifically, this API is going to say, I need to add a content footer. I need to add a content header with this text and this font, so it's completely configurable by the admin. I need to apply this metadata to the content. So this is what tells us that the information is labeled. So if I apply this to a Word doc or to a PDF, downstream applications using MIP SDK will be able to consume that label and understand how to treat that information. Oh, sorry, this is the remove. The add is here, so this is where we'll actually add the metadata. If I had protection actions, those would surface here as well. So it would say apply this template ID or allow the user to define the protection, and then the user would have some user interface to set that. Oh, we have an API for removal. So if you have a piece of information, so similar to apply or evaluate application, I'm going to pass in some content state that says, here's what I have on the document. Tell me how to remove this label. And then the API is just going to return some explicit instructions on which metadata I need to strip out of that to remove the MIP label. Only for my organization. So if Contoso and Fabricam have both labeled this document, and I'm calling this remove from Fabricam, I'll only remove the Fabricam metadata. So then the next one is extract label. So this might be if I've written some software that can extract the strings or metadata out of some document that I found, either DLP software or my firewall software, or maybe just a line of business app. I can pass that metadata up to the extract label API, and it'll tell me exactly which labels on that content. So here you can see that I've extracted some key value pairs from the document that I found, call this API, and we'll actually get the label ID back. So I would know that this label is scope to Bob tests. And then finally, this one I saved till last only because it's only sort of available. This one allows you to perform classification. So one of the E5 features that's available inside of MIP is that I can perform auto classification by setting rules inside of the label policy. So I can say if you find a certain number of credit cards or social security numbers, that information should be highly confidential and you should apply that label to it. Now, the gap here is that we don't actually have any public APIs that allow customers and partners to do this classification. So you could certainly go into our docs and look up, like, find the sensitive information type ID and build your own classification system, pass that into our API here, and we would give you a result. But doing that classification would be up to you. So what this API takes in is a content info. Well, we give an identifier. This is what will actually show up in my analytics for the admin to review. Some state information, at rest, in motion, and then format. So this is default or email. Default refers to files. And then I'll pass in some classification results. So assuming I wrote my own classifier or I'm using the Microsoft classification engine, which is what Office uses, I pass in a sensitive information ID. I pass in the number of occurrences that I found and my confidence level. And based on all of that, the API will return a recommended label or an automatic label. Recommended means, hey, user, we found some information in your document. You should label this appropriately, and they can choose to do that or to ignore it. Automatic is just happens. The user gets no choice. We say, wow, there's 100 credit card numbers in this document. We need to make that highly confidential, and then we'll apply that label. So overall, what we've exposed here in Graph and what we're moving to the new endpoint here this week are just the APIs that allow us to reason over policy. I can, again, list labels in my application. I can use it to evaluate label application or removal. I can use it to extract the content metadata and resolve that to a label, or I can perform the classification results. Quick plug, I'll be on the 425 Dev Show on Thursday morning this week at 8 a.m. to talk more about MIP SDK. I'll show a sample application there, ASP.NET Core sample app, probably on Linux and Windows. And so if you're wanting to learn more about MIP SDK, that's at 8 a.m. on Thursday. And I will answer questions in chat.
Cool. Thank you, Tom, on that one. Let's jump harsh hit to your presentation right away. And as I said, Tom, let's follow up on the questions on the chat. There were some questions to follow up.
All right. Thank you, Vesa. We share my screen.
Yep, we can see the screen. And yep,
okay,
excellent. Take it away.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so my name is Harshit, and I'm joined by my coworker Karthikeyan, and we both are product managers in the Graph Connectors team. And Karthikeyan will be helping me in answering some of the questions on the chat, and he will also be posting some questions. Please help us answer those questions, and we want to get feedback from you, right? So the topic today is Cloud SSA and Graph Connectors, right? And this is what I plan to cover today. I will quickly give a brief introduction on what Cloud SSA is and what is Microsoft Search and how we can help as Graph Connectors to help you explore Graph Connectors. If you're a Cloud SSA customer, how do you explore Graph Connectors and kind of get more value as a customer, right? So that's kind of the agenda in the nutshell, and I'll do a demo of Microsoft Search with connectors also. So with that, yeah, quick overview of what Cloud SSA. Cloud SSA or Cloud Hybrid Search is our SharePoint hybrid search solution, and which means that if you have a SharePoint on-prem installation, it could be a 2013 or 2016, plus some of your content is sitting in SharePoint Online, you could use Cloud SSA to index content which is sitting on-prem, which could be inside your SharePoint installation on-prem, or it could be sitting in your file share websites and a bunch of other on-prem data sources you might have, right? So this Cloud SSA solution helps you bring all the index into one single location, which is sitting in the cloud, in the Office 365 cloud, and it lets you query from both sides. You can, from your users can query in the SharePoint Online, as well as your users, if they're sitting on-prem, they can query in the on-prem SharePoint search box as well. So it kind of provides you best of both worlds, essentially, right? So if you look at the end user experience in this cloud hybrid search, people can search on both and they will get interleaved results, right? So with that, in fact, Karthikeyan, do you want to post your question? I'm just curious, like how many customers are in this forum are using Cloud SSA? Yeah, and keep in mind this question is anonymous. So if you choose to answer, please answer. Yeah, otherwise you can skip as well.
Okay, Harshit, I think we can finish this slide. Then we can go to the third question.
Okay. Thank you, Karthikeyan. So that's the user experience. And in terms of Cloud SSA enabling you to bring in content from non-Microsoft sources, Cloud SSA supports these things, as I mentioned, SharePoint site, websites, which could be non-SharePoint based, on-prem file shares, Exchange public folders, or you could even use you can bring in data from your line of business applications, right? And for that line of business applications, what customers typically use is something called the BCS, the Business Connectivity Service Framework. And either you use one of these things which are provided out of the box, database or a web service, or you can even write custom BCS connectors, which you could help you bring your line of business data into the search index. So that's kind of the other functionality which is available in Cloud SSA. If you have to draw like a high-level picture on what Cloud SSA does, I think this is kind of a summary of that. So Cloud SSA lets you crawl all your on-prem content. It could be SharePoint Online, Exchange, SQL Server, or any of the other custom line of business application. All that content is crawled and parsed, and it is plugged into through the search content service, which we have, which is in like an intermediate service. And eventually the content kind of goes and sits into the SharePoint Online farm, which is again owned and managed by managed by Microsoft, but it is owned by their tenant. So the data is all secure and within your tenant boundary, right? So this is kind of a high-level picture of what Cloud SSA provides you. So now moving along. So now introducing Microsoft Search, right? So Microsoft Search, as you know, is the modern search solution, right? I think this was launched a few years back, and it is the intelligent search for your workplace, right? And it works across your company or across your entire Microsoft 365. And the same promise of Microsoft data is secure, private, and never shared. So you kind of are the owner of that data, and you have full control of that data, right? The results in Microsoft Search are powered by Microsoft Graph, and they are personalized for you and your work, essentially. And also Microsoft Search is available on any device, anywhere, right? You can search in SharePoint, Office.com, Bing. We have Graph APIs available. It's also available in Teams and Windows Desktop, right? So just to show you a snippet of SharePoint, if I go to SharePoint, I can search on using Microsoft Search. And on the right side, if you go to bing.com and then sign in with my corporate credentials, I can search my work content under the work tab, right? So that's another experience which Microsoft Search provides. So now, what about the external data sources? Like similar to what Cloud SSA provided, we have graph connectors, which lets you bring in content from your third-party data sources, plug it into Microsoft Graph, and Once the data is plugged into Microsoft Graph, it powers Microsoft Search plus a bunch of intelligent experiences. Some of these experiences are in preview. Some of the experiences are rolling out or in development. Right? I think I'll show you some glimpses of some of the experiences, but these are all intelligent experiences. And these are enabled once you bring in data using the graph connectors. So, and I think just going deeper on the graph connector itself, we have 3 kinds of graph connectors. We have some Microsoft built connectors. We have our partners who have built connectors. And the third category is custom connectors. You can go and build your own connectors as well. So just to quickly show a demo of what I mean by the connectors. So if I go to the Microsoft Admin Center, and under that, which is admin.microsoft.com, and I log in with my admin credentials, I go to Search and Intelligence tab. Here I can see data sources, and this is where I come and configure my graph connectors. So as you can see here, I've configured a SQL Server connection here, a Jira, an ADO work item, and a bunch of other connections which I've created. And I can create connection for any of these 14 data sources which Microsoft supports. So these are the data sources which Microsoft provides connectors for. And in addition, you can kind of go to this connector gallery. There's a link here, and you can procure connectors from our partners also. So we have 130 plus connectors from our partners. So if I go to the search experience, if I go to my SharePoint site for my company, I can go and search for content there. So this is the connector. This is the content which is sitting in SharePoint. Plus, I can search my Azure DevOps, which I plugged in, or I have a Jira instance which I plugged in into this using a connector, or even the Azure DevOps wiki. I think that's another source we support. But just showing you a sample of these. And similar experiences you will get in office.com and also bing.com. So this is kind of the what your end users will see and kind of interact with. So in the interest of time, I'll just quickly go through some of this stuff. I think we talked about this catalog, the search experience, and Graph Connector licensing. Microsoft built connectors are free, but we charge based on number of items you index. For every E5 or a Viva Topics license, you get 500 items free, and you can purchase additional quota. We also have a 3 months free trial. So if you're interested, we'll provide you a link later on how to sign up. So that was the search experience, and the other intelligent experiences which I talked about, intelligent discovery. If I go to office.com, I get recommendation and content which is recent and shared amongst my peers or the people I work with. Today, this content is primarily 1P, which is like SharePoint OneDrive content, but we are plugging in 3P content. So in this case, Go1 video is the content which is being shown here. So all the third-party content which you're getting from your ServiceNow, Salesforce, all kind of data sources, you can plug in and it will automatically start showing up here. There is Viva Topics, which is more like content curation, automatic content creation and such. So today it's again based on 1P, but we are working on building this for 3P content as well. Context IQ is another intelligent experience, which will help you contextually insert content from other third-party data sources. Right? So so this was announced in November, and we have a preview coming up later this year. Graph Connectors is also, it's already, Microsoft Search is available in Windows Search Box, but we are also going to power Graph Connectors in Windows Search, and this is coming in June this year. So you don't have to go anywhere. You just go to your Windows Search Box and search content. You'll see content from your connectors, from your third-party data sources, essentially. In addition, as I mentioned, you can build your own custom connector, and we already have Graph APIs available today. We are also building an SDK, and this SDK is in preview mode. If you want to sign up, you can try out this and kind of build your own connector. Yeah, so in summary, I think we are saying that if you're interested in this cool additional capabilities of Graph Connectors, you could pretty much replace your Cloud SSA box with the on-prem Graph Connector agent, and it will let you crawl all your on-prem content and ingest that content into Graph. Right? And once the content, as I mentioned, is in Graph, it can power search and other powerful experiences. right? So Cloud SSA still continues to exist, but this is what I'm saying. Graph Connectors is more giving you more value and more kind of features as such. So that's that, and this is a quick comparison or between Cloud SSA versus Graph Connectors. So pretty much all the major data sources which are available in Cloud SSA, we support a connector here, and it should help you kind of easily move to Graph Connectors if you are interested. So that's pretty much what we had. If you are interested in exploring Graph Connectors, please go to this link and fill the form as well. Right? So we are looking for customers who we can talk to and who are excited about Graph Connectors and help them onboard onto Graph Connectors. That's all I wanted to cover.
Cool. Thank you, Harshit, on that one. Thank you, Kartikeyan, on helping on the questions. Great way of, by the way, collecting input throughout the session and discussion. There's more than 100 responses on the first one, so really, really good job on that. But now let's jump on Seb, because we still have 14 minutes. Seb, can you do it in 14 minutes?
Let's see. I'm pretty sure I will be good. Well, let's start. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Today we will be completing our tour of all the Microsoft Graph Toolkit components. In the last couple of weeks, we went through all the different components that are made available via the Microsoft Graph Toolkit. And today we are completing it by looking at the one that was missing, the one that can actually fill all the gaps that all the others might not deliver for your solution. So in that case, we're going to talk about the get component. Just a little bit of a recap on what the Microsoft Graph Toolkit is. The Graph Toolkit is a collection of reusable framework agnostic components and auth providers that allows you to access and work with Microsoft Graph. So think about ready to go, fully functional component that you can drag and drop into your web applications that automatically connects you to Microsoft Graph. You can customize them and you can work with any framework, whether you're using React, Angular, Vue.js, plain HTML, whatever, you can use them all. And you're going to be able to use them on all the modern browsers. Why would you care about the Graph Toolkit? First, it enables you to cut on development time. It's really easy to add a UI component and get functionality right out of the box inside your app with just a couple of lines of code. They're also beautiful. So they are built in Microsoft 365. So they are really similar to the native controls that you can find in Microsoft 365. But they also allow you to fully customize them to really bring the value and the brand and the look and feel you're expecting for your own components. And finally, it just works everywhere. You want to work in Teams, you want to work in SharePoint, you want to work in a web app, you want to work in Electron, wherever you want that web app to run, you're going to be able to use the Graph Toolkit. Today component is the component that delivers all the value that you need. In that case, it's called the get component. Think about the get component as being a generic component that allows you to connect to any resource, any endpoint in Microsoft Graph, and render these entities coming back from Graph directly inside your UI. You can build, you can customize your UI, you can bring any type of controls in there, and you can literally use the MGT get component as a way to get any data, to cache it, to secure it, and then to render it. So let's go on to a little bit of a demo of two scenarios that I want to showcase with you today. So let's start with this. Let me kill that guy here. And now we are good to go. So let me just zoom in just one more step. I think it's going to be easier. So what we will be building today is two experiences. One around emails. As you have noticed, there is no current MGT email component. We have had person, tasks, Teams channel picker files, and a bunch of others, but there is no email scenarios. And why? Maybe it's because there is too much scenarios to cover. So potentially it's easier for developers to build on top of the Get component to have their own experiences rolled out. So what does it mean for the developer? So let's start with looking at our app. Our app is the same app we've been using since the beginning. We have been using the same ID, the same MSAL provider, same authentication also. But now we're leveraging it in a little bit of different ways. And why? We have removed the scopes. Because we're going to use different capabilities as part of the Get components, we will want the component to decide what are the scopes that they will require. So that way, when we connect the first time, we're going to have the consent screen only when we're going to run the MGT Get component. You could have added all these scopes back to the MSAL provider, but I wanted to make it a little bit cleaner in that case. So let me open the emails panel here and let's go and have a look. And let's look at the code. I'm going to skip the styling. We've done a couple of styling capabilities in the past. We support CSS. We support any type of styling you'd be looking into with whatever the framework you're using. So you can basically bring your own style here. Here's just really plain CSS that we had in there. But let's start with this one here. The first thing we're going to find is we're going to find a component called MGT Get. That component will be identifying a specific resource, which is this one. And this one is one of the endpoints available on Microsoft Graph. Any input, any endpoint that gives you a result back, you will be able to use it within the MGT Get component. But afterwards here, you know that your component will require mail.read because that's what the messages endpoint requires, in that case, mail.read. But you're going to see later that we added capabilities to delete an email. And to delete the email, we're going to need mail.read write. So we were asking both of them. We also have the capability here to say, hey, I want to have a maximum of 1 page. So it's going to get only the first page of results and we'll show it. So it's great for a scenario where you want to see your latest emails, maybe less ideal for a scenario where you want to see all your emails. But in this case, you could build on top of this to request the next page, for instance. And finally, in this case, we're going to add a polling rate. We can automatically ask the component to re-render itself if the data changed every 5 seconds or 5,000 milliseconds in that case. So how do we do that? So what's going to happen here? MGT Get will emit a call to Microsoft Graph to this resource using the authentication that we already have in place. So it's going to be all secured. It's going to be connecting to the delegated user that is using this application. So in that case, myself. And then we're going to use the template. The template here will bring all the data back from Graph, and we will be able to use some data properties to be able to iterate through our array of mails that are coming back. And we're going to use the data for here. So basically here, think about doing a for each email that is in value. Value is always the property that Graph will return when there is an array of something. So when you're getting a collection of messages, there's going to be a property called value in which you're going to have an array of emails. And that's what we're doing here. So basically, we're saying for every single email that exists in this array here, please render this entire div. So you're going to have as many divs as you have emails in the value right there. Here it's going to render a header. The beauty of the MGT Get component, but also the nature of web components, is you can also reuse other MGT components as part of a Get response. So in that case here, we're just passing in the MGT person, and then it's going to create a query to this email.sender.email address. So it's going to use the email address of the person that sent the email and try to render an MGT person that's going to display the avatar and all these kind of things. Later on, we're going to have in our comment bar, we're going to have an area where you will want to click. Here you can see it on the left, on the right. There's a small trash icon right there that allows you to delete this email. Well, how do you do that? You can register events and say, when you're going to click on this, I want you to call the delete click method. And we're going to see later on what does it mean. So you really can build a lot of functionality here. You're really, within the context of MGT Get, you can build tons of behaviors within that component so it stays a single component. Same thing here. When we are clicking on the email, that's going to open up a new window with the email. So it's going to be helpful to have that email click. And here you see we have the ability to register functions to run some logic here. Here, it's going to allow me to format a date based on the email received date time. So let me show you a little bit of that JavaScript code that just sits right here within that component. First, we're going to be able to get a reference to my MGT email ID that I created. That is my MGT get component. I'm going to add to the template context a get formatted date. So automatically I will be able to call into this specific one here. On the email click, I'm going to be able to take these properties that are being sent by MGT automatically to this event, and I will be able to get the context, that email, that web link, and I will be able to open a new window. And on delete, I will be able to get an instance of my provider, the provider being the authenticated graph client that we have somewhere in MGT, and I will be able to use it to perform some activities on graph. In that case, I will be able to post a move of the item. Actually, when you delete something in Outlook, you're actually moving it to the deleted item folder. So that's what we're going to do here. And afterwards, we're going to refresh the UI so it refreshes with the latest data, and therefore will remove the data that we just added. So let me show you what it looks like here. When I click on this, it opens up a new window with the actual email in there. So pretty useful. But when I click on delete, it's going to automatically delete it. We'll be loading it, and now we are gone. So with just a couple of lines of code, we are able to deliver a fully customized experience for end users. You can build whatever the UI you want. You can incorporate any UI framework. Think about Tailwind, Bootstrap, Fluent, anything to make it look like your app or even your own UI framework. And you will be really able to build on top of the foundation of MGT, but bring your own value in there. Just before we finish, I just want to show you another example that we built, a very different one that was built by a good friend of mine, Waldek, that built a files explorer built on another framework. In that case, it's called H2O, which delivers a very similar value, but it's all built using MGT. So you can really build the experience you're looking for in the way that you're looking for when MGT is not, it does not cover all the scenarios that you would want to have. Well, MGT Get is your gateway to your own creativity. So that's what I wanted to showcase for today. Quickly, let me go back here just for 1 second. All the resources for MGT are available here. The samples were already updated. So if you want to get the code for today's session, you can go to aka.ms/mgt/sandbox. And on top of that, thanks everybody. Next week, we're going to talk about integrating with other platforms like React, SPFX, Teams, and all of that. So Vesa, back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Seb, on that one. Really, really cool stuff. And it's the Get component or control is so cool. It's so flexible and makes magical things happen. Now, it is time to wrap up the call. So thank you, Tom. Thank you, Harshif, Kartikeyan as well. And thank you, Seb. Really, really cool stuff and cool demos on this one again. and we'll have the recording available within 24 hours in our YouTube channel. So first of all, we do have quite a few different community calls available. So every single Tuesday at this time, we have a call. Every single Thursday at 7 a.m. Pacific time, there's a call as well. And on Thursday call, it's basically Microsoft 365 community development or Viva Connections. And then on top of those series, we have monthly series on Adaptive Card, Microsoft Identity Platform, Office add-ins, and Power App side. And that is missing, by the way, a space. That is the wrong way of writing Power Apps. Now, the recording will be available in 24 hours in our YouTube channel. Like mentioned, you cannot access that directly from the chat whenever you're seeing the recording available from there. That is because of the limitations of the platform. The next Microsoft 365 platform community call is happening on February 22nd at 8 a.m. Pacific time. So normal weekly call on Tuesday mornings. But that's it for this one. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you for the interactive discussion also in the chat. Thank you once again for the presenters, and please keep the feedback coming. We really want to build, and we are building the Microsoft 365 platform and features for you. So your input does matter. But thank you for this one, and let's see at least in next week. Bye-bye.